Hey there, Messiah. Listen, chump here. If you're still watching these, then you'll be here when the wheels fall off, because I think the sleep deprivation's catching up with me, and I think this image is indicative of that. So, I don't know if this is the tutorial that you need or deserve, but I'm gonna finish it up for you, buddy. So, if I go back to my history panel, and back up till before any of this happened, I think we'll find right around, I have a lot of undos. Right around here. So I think when things went awry. Yeah, good enough. That's where we're starting. So when you have something like this, just a layer that I'm going to double click on the name of and call Panda Rat, you want to duplicate this layer by choosing the Move tool. You can press V to do that automatically, and then hold down Alt and scooch this panda over. And if you want to get crazy, you can just keep going, but I digress. If you have two pandas here, what you can do is select one of them, and I'm going to rename this Shadow. Nice. The reason why I'm doing this way is because if you depend on layer styles to make your shadow, it always looks like terrible. I'll show you what I mean. Here's my panda. If I double click off of the name, instead of renaming it, what it does is bring up the layer styles panel, and in here you'll find Shadow, like drop shadow, but the problem is it kind of treats the entire thing as being shadow cast worthy. That's a term. You might look it up in a book. And if I have this drop shadow, I can actually distance it, but it doesn't look real is the problem. I could change the size of it to diffuse it a little bit, and in certain instances maybe you could use that, but really most often I don't use it unless I have something flat on a tabletop like surface. Any of this kind of foreshortening or perspective, it's gonna let you down. So let me just back out of there. Alright, that's one way to do a shadow. I promised 3. So we had dodge and burn in the last tutorial. That was just the layer styles. And finally, we have this second layer that we created. If I take that layer and, oops, if you hold Control and click on something, it usually selects the appropriate layer. So with that layer selected, what I'm going to do is hit Control T. Now I can rotate it upside down, and I can kind of put it on this guy's feet. See that? With that in position, sometimes what you have to do is flip this horizontally to have it make a little bit more sense, kind of like a mirror image. And depending on if you're making a shadow or a reflection, you might distort this a little bit more or less. But I think this seems okay. I might make it match with my light source a little bit better and shrink it horizontally so that the legs will still line up when I'm finished. And if you want to get really fancy, technically shadows get bigger as they go away from something. So after I line up these feet, I can go to this little magic clicky box up here, another technical term, and it brings up this warp option. So you can kind of warp this shadow in the making into getting a little bit bigger towards the top. Alright, nice. This is like nightmare worthy. Alright, so I'm going to tweak that just a little bit. Use my eraser to maybe diffuse this a little bit towards the feet so it doesn't overlap. I'm hitting undo by holding Control Z. You can step back in your panel by hitting Control Alt Z, and Control Shift Z moves you forward. So yeah, that's a thing. What did I do? Oh dear. There we go. Man, the wheels have fallen off, buddy. Alright, so I'm going to tweak that just a little bit more. Control T and mesh warp. I am losing a little bit of fidelity every time, but it's not going to matter for my shadow. So with the shadow layer selected, what I'm going to do up here is change my blending mode from normal to multiply. That's actually the same blending mode that gets applied to a drop shadow if you're doing it through layer styles. You'll see it makes it darker, but you can still make out some of the details of your panda rat. So up here at the top, what we're going to do is go to Image, Adjustments, and there's a bunch of ways to do it, but exposure's fast. Exposure, we're going to lower that down, and you can see you lose all the details in your thing. And now you've got a shadow, but it's just a little bit too intense. So first what I'm going to do is go up to opacity, or opacity. I don't have any idea how that's pronounced. If someone's watching this, please tell me. I always feel like I'm saying it wrong. Okay, I'm gonna lower that down to being a little bit more reasonable, like 47% seems pretty good. I could go to 30. You know my preference for 30s, but I'm making an exception. We're going 50. So 50%, and for the big finish, what we're gonna do is first blur this using the blur tool, which doesn't actually have a keyboard shortcut. So with that selected and a soft brush here at the top of my tool panel thing, I'm going to go to the edge of my shadow and start to blur it out. And once you get this bottom area looking blurry enough, which is taking me forever, what you're going to do is switch over to your eraser tool with a similarly soft edge on it. I'm going to use the bracket key again to make this larger. And then I'm just going to kind of make this shadow sort of dither into nothing. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, shadows. Alright, buddy. Good luck.